Welcome back. Namaste. So, I want to talk about a fairy tale of a couple of Sigmas. I'd say Cinderella and Prince Charming were a pair of Sigmas, because Cinderella was being abused, even though she, of course, was the most beautiful, but because she's a stepdaughter and stepsister, she got, she was being gaslighted and picked on by the evil stepmother and stepsisters, and they made a wicked deal with her, saying, yeah, you can go to the ball. And then they gave her a bunch of rags and laughed. They gave her rags to make a gown out of, and they laughed. And she made, because she was so talented, she made a gown for herself. And of course, when the sisters saw that, the stepsisters, they tore it apart. They sabotaged her, right? So then they go to the ball, and things, had to get cut short because she was being helped out by her fairy godmother or whatever. But Prince Charming, see, he went looking for her, and he was also obviously a Sigma, because he didn't care that she wasn't like, the top level on the hierarchy. He just cared about the person. He wasn't trying to get her because it was a superficial, marriage. Like, if I marry her, this will give me status. He didn't care about it, because he makes his own status, because a Sigma can't rely on status, because that just opens you up for abuse and criticism. So to be a Sigma is just to be the best you can be, and always try to improve on yourself and not harm the people around you. That's one of the aspects. And I'm going to tell you, I'm really sticking to this, because I'm telling you, I'm going back to I told you in the Bible, Adam was a beta. He simped and sold out and went against God for Eve. Then the two kids they had, one was an alpha and one was a Sigma, empath. And obviously, the alpha narcissist, that's the way he's built. That's his genetic DNA. They want to kill you. That's why we had dueling for so many years in this country. And the reason why there's so many narcissists is because there's no more dueling or anything. And the system's been taken over by narcissists, especially around Woodrow Wilson's time. And then, what's his name? Roosevelt came in, and he became president for 3 times. See, using crisis to benefit himself, while everyone else is suffering. He got to die in office. He was also a user of cocaine and drank a lot, just like because he couldn't deal with knowing he was a real, killing people. He was a mass murderer. Just like what's his name said, Nixon said, history is written by the victors. Anyway, I want to mention The Godfather, since I mentioned The Godfather so many times, and I wanted to say this for a long time about The Godfather. Part 1 is the most nostalgic movie. Part 2 is a documentary. And Part 3 is a masterpiece. That's what I have to say about that. And I also want to mention Lee Majors. You see, I told you about some fictional Sigmas that were made Sigma through trauma, like James Bond, Dirty Harry, I mentioned, and Vito Corleone from The Godfather. But Lee Majors, he also is a obvious Sigma, and I don't know if you know this, but he lost both his parents before he was even 2 years old. His parents were killed in separate accidents. They were killed in separate accidents, and if that's very traumatic to lose your. And I believe his uncle raised him. Then he was a football player, college, I believe. Very capable man, and the reason why his character is so likable is because he's that father figure. He's that. We grew up Generation X. A lot of us don't have our natural father, so we see a guy like Lee Majors. And we have the same DNA somehow. We have the same mind frame that we just took to it. So since I didn't know my actual father growing up, when I saw Lee Majors on television, my imaginary mind made him my father. Of course, I knew it wasn't real, but just to make myself deal with the pain and agony and the isolation of not having a father and seeing people, their fathers, and I never got to have that. And then having to deal with a stepfather, things got real tricky, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, Lee Majors, excellent example. And then in the movies, the TV show he was in, The Fall Guy, rather the $6 Million Man, he suffers major trauma to be built into basically a cyborg robot. In fact, the name of it was actually called Cyborg before it was called the $6 Million Man, or we call it the Bionic Man. Lee Majors, man, he's 83 years old. He's still kicking. Then he was Colt Seavers in The Fall Guy. He played those roles so well, especially The Fall Guy, that to me he's like a historic figure. To me, he's just as important as George Washington. That's my opinion. I'm getting choked up. I'm out. Later.